Ave Maria in the Afternoon is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. Welcome to Ave Maria in the Afternoon, examining the world through the lens of faith from the heart of the Church to help us navigate the culture. Here's Dr. Marcus Peter.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us on this hour of Ave Maria in the Afternoon. I'm Marcus Peter. We're going to be speaking with our friend Dr. Gregory Popcak, who is a wealth of family wisdom for us. And he is going to talk with us about how play rituals are an important part of family formation. Play rituals, as he would share with us, is actually part of the way that Christian families form godly kids, which is almost unthinkable, or at least we don't think of it that way. We don't see the connection, and yet, by playing together, we model healthy and godly ways to have fun. We teach our children what leisure and enjoyment can look like, and we give them the freedom to be at leisure around us, which is a wonderful thing, because when they understand that every facet of life is flowing from the love of God, including mommy and daddy's leisure and rest, it holds profound significance for how they continue to grow into a sense of owning the faith for themselves. We'll talk about that with Dr. Greg Popcak. We go on from there to speak with Dr. Edmund Seebauer. Much public controversy has swirled around the question whether science and engineering are compatible with religion. A great deal of Christian evangelization answers yes, but this answer misses two important points: that Christianity can make a difference for engineering, and that engineering can make a difference for Christianity. So we're going to talk about that with Dr. Edmund Seebauer. And then finally, we speak with Conn Carroll. Once the cornerstone of American life, marriage has seen a dramatic fall from grace. In 1960, 4 out of 5 households were led by married couples. Today, that number has plummeted to less than half, with more people choosing cohabitation over commitment. I shared that fact at a marriage conference some time ago, and it positively brought some parents to tears, knowing that this was the statistical future that their children would be facing and that they would have to buck against. The American family, as we once knew it, is unraveling, and yet it remains the bedrock and foundation and cell of a thriving society and nation. We need to talk about this as a problem and seek out the solution, which ultimately finds its fullest flourishing in the person of Jesus Christ and faith lived out in practice in His one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. And so we talk about that with Conn Carroll. All this after the headlines.
Thanks, Marcus. Good afternoon, everyone. This is your Ave Maria Radio News for Tuesday, August 5th. It's the feast of the dedication of the Basilica of St. Mary Major. Today's news brought to you by Ave Maria University. Your vocation location is at avemaria.edu. Texas Republicans are pressing forward with a plan to punish the Democrats who have fled the state to protest redistricting. It's being led by State Representative Mitch Little.
The House Committee on General Investigating, by statute or rule, has the authority to convene regardless of whether our body has a quorum.
House Speaker Dustin Burrows saying that he's been in consultation with state troopers who's been charged with tracking down the rogue Democrats. House rules say that any member who solicits, accepts, or agrees to accept such funds to assist in the violation of legislative duties for the purposes of skipping a vote may have violated bribery laws. Israel's plan to occupy the Gaza Strip seems to be on track. NBC's Matt Bradley.
Now, the IDF says it already controls the majority of Gaza, but this would be a major expansion and an escalation. It could complicate any negotiated deal to free those remaining hostages, of whom there are thought to be only about 20 still left alive.
A source in Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office says a decision has been made and that the Palestinian militant group Hamas will not release the remaining hostages taken in 2023 unless the area comes under full Israeli occupation. The U.S. Coast Guard has called the deadly OceanGate Titan submersible implosion preventable. 5 people were killed during a voyage to view the wreckage of the Titanic in 2023. The report found the company's CEO was warned repeatedly of how dangerous the submersible was and threatened to end anyone who raised concerns while ignoring all warnings. And a district judge is blocking Arkansas's new law regarding posters of the Ten Commandments being hung in classrooms. From your AveMariaRadio.net news desk, I'm Steve Clark.
Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. In an age where you and I are just bombarded by screens, algorithms, endless distraction, it's inevitable. We are seeing the slow erosion of childhood in the lives of many children, because the days when children ran freely through fields, climbed trees, fought dragons in their backyard, strangled trolls, staged heroic rescues of damsels in distress while they played knights, those days are dying. And while many children do enjoy these phases, they're fewer and getting smaller. The window is closing, and the reason why is because of screens. It's because of the digital arena. Many now sit passively. They're overstimulated, but they're definitely underformed. Social media is an amazing entertainer, but a horrendous formator. And this cultural shift, it's not just about lifestyle or psychology. What I want to put to you, as I've learned from Greg and Lisa Popchak, no less, is that this is a deeply spiritual reality, because play, especially when we rightly understand it, has a theological reality to it. Yes, I said that right. Play has a theological reality to it, and therefore, to play well, especially as a family, is to image God well. What Greg and Lisa have found in their studies and in their work in family therapy for many years now is that families that pray together and live out the Catholic faith in their daily experience, so it's more than just going to church every Sunday, and therefore allow the intimacy and love of Christ, that covenantal relationship and bond they have with Christ, they allow that to influence all of the enjoyment and happiness of their life, including playfulness. They play with each other. They structure times of ritual play. This has actually been proven to be one of the most powerful ways to help children keep the faith as they grow older, because when play is cultivated in the life of the family, it can be approached with a kind of reverence and intentionality to help children understand that mommy and daddy are modeling what virtuous play can look like, and therefore, in my life in God, I am not only allowed to have fun and enjoyment and laughter, I'm encouraged to have fun and enjoyment and laughter in the presence of my Father. You look at Genesis chapter 1, you see God creates the world. But it's not a language of utility. We're so used to a utilitarian worldview. But God creates with the language of joyful purpose, because he separates light from darkness, land from sea, and he calls it good. The Hebrew word here is tov. He makes man in his own image, and he says this is really tov. He invites him into the divine pattern of life and life-giving creativity. So human beings are workers, they're worshippers, they're co-creators, and therefore they become, in a real sense, players. In the spirit of the liturgy, Benedict XVI talks about how man is a kind of player on the grand stage that is creation, and the ultimate act of the play is the Sabbath. And so human persons become imitators of divine delight. Just as God delights in man, we get to delight in creation and ultimately delight in God. The Jewish philosopher Abraham Joshua Heschel writes, just to be is a blessing, just to be is a blessing, but just to live is holy. So this is what children are like. When they're at play, they reflect God's joy as he delights in us, and as parents delight in watching their children play, they are reflecting the Father's love for them. Play is not a distraction from formation. I argue, and the church has always said this, that it is formation. There's a philosophical reality to this. It is formative. Through play, children actually learn how to imagine the unseen, and that imagination is crucial because that imagination gets baptized into their contemplation of the faith, that the unseen God becomes real to them. Play teaches children how to enter into roles that teach them about virtue, duty, sacrifice, beauty. They rehearse the liturgies of life before they even know what liturgy even means. So the child who goes forth with a sword, slaying imaginary dragons, may be forming the habits of St. George before he can spell the word saint, or even understand that George slayed spiritual dragons. In his brilliant work, After Virtue, Alistair McIntyre actually emphasized the role of narrative in moral formation, and therefore he's talking about the role of imagination here. He says this: I can only answer the question, what am I to do, if I can answer the prior question of what story or stories do I find myself a part. Children steeped in meaningful play begin to have an intuition formed about the drama of good versus evil. Give any young boy a stick, tell him it's a sword, and tell him there are dragons out there, and tell him, and you need to protect your little sister from them, and he's going to go out into that yard swinging. And that teaches children the intuition of good versus evil, moral benefit versus moral decline, but also of courage versus cowardice. Long before they internalize the news of the gospel, they internalize a moral imagination. And so for girls especially, things like playing house. For boys, building forts, rescuing imaginary villages from dragons. These actions, these playful actions, train the hearts of children to love, prudence and justice and temperance and fortitude and truth and mercy and fidelity to a cause. Now, that sounds like romanticism, but I'm not trying to romanticize this. The Catholic philosopher Joseph Pieper wrote in Leisure, the Basis of Culture, that the very ability to contemplate, to wonder, to play, to imagine, it was essential to human civilization and its development. Play opens a child to the contemplation of mystery in a world where we've become hyper-rational and hyper-digital. Everything's on a screen. You don't have to imagine anymore. Secularism reduces the world to utility and nothing else. Giving our children space to play without the tropes of screens reintroduces enchantment, wonder, mysticism. And in this way, play becomes a school of prayer, a school of hope. A child who plays well learns to believe that goodness is real and worth fighting for, worth pursuing. Catholic theology has always insisted the material world is sacramental. It reveals the divine. This is called a sacramental worldview, lowercase s, mind you. There are 7 true sacraments instituted by the Church. But a sacramental worldview means I can look at nature and see the thumbprint of my Father. And so we can see grace even in water and oil and bread and wine and words and touch and voice. To play is to touch the earth and taste the heavens. A child kneeling in the grass builds a mud castle or tries to make a crown of dandelions, and they're already learning that this beautiful thing gives them a delight that cannot be described by mere material words. This instinct is what liturgical theologians spend their whole lifetime unpacking. Matter matters. And that's why we have to teach our children to play a lot and play well. Teach them to play with reverence, creativity, moral clarity. This isn't neutral ground. Play is sacred ground. Boys and girls take on these roles. Boys want to be knights, and fathers should help induct them into knighthood. Girls want to be princesses, and fathers should, and mothers too, should help allow these girls to be princesses, to teach them to rise up to become kings and queens, to teach sons to be heroes, to teach daughters to be servants of the Most High King. They're not just killing time here. They're forming themselves in moral virtue in ways that they don't even think. They're rehearsing these biblical archetypes that point beyond themselves. John Paul II loved hiking and skiing. He played football in Europe, soccer in America. He played and he played sports, and they formed not just his body but his soul. In fact, he said this: every genuine sport must be accompanied by celebration and festivity, for it is in itself a festive game. Part of the other problem of becoming so utilitarian is every game becomes nothing short of a competition. And so parents superimpose on children the need to be so overtly competitive that we take the play away from the game, which is to rob the child of that avenue of moral formation. Because children learn to be human by playing with others. The give and take of play, the practice of empathy, rules, cooperation, limitation of their own capacity, learning to have the willpower to rise above those limitations, and learning how to lose well and to win graciously. When 2 children argue over who gets the red cape or who gets to be Aragorn instead of an orc, they are undergoing a kind of moral formation. Taking turns is noble. Winning kindly is gracious. And this echoes what Christ taught us, that the last shall be the first and the first shall be the last. Play and enjoy play and teach our children to pray so that they can enter into communion with each other and ultimately with the Lord our God. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.
St. Therese once told her sister Celine that when we trust ourselves and not God, our soul becomes barren and incapable of virtue. Her remedy? External works of charity. We all try to do it on our own sometimes without asking for God's help. At St. Paul Evangelization, we suggest sharing the gospel with someone who needs it. Check out streetevangelization.com to find a team near you where you can share the love of Jesus. If there isn't one in your area yet, perhaps God is calling you to start a team in your city. To learn more, visit streetevangelization.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Marcus Peter, host of Ave Maria in the Afternoon and Unveiling the Covenants. Ave Maria Radio has been at the forefront of dialoguing faith at the intersection of all things pertaining to human flourishing. We need your help. Our infrastructure is in urgent need of updating. We want to ask you to support us in this summer campaign. Every gift, no matter how big or small, will be useful to bringing the gospel to the ends of the earth. Thank you. You are broadcasting hope with us.
This week on Christ is the Answer, Father John talks about the moral life. It's no secret that the world we live in challenges us in our beliefs every day. The culture paints God as a rule-mandating enemy, and not as our loving Father. God knows what's best for us, and has given us the freedom to choose. And one of those choices is whether or not to live a moral life. Join us this week as Father John shows us what the moral life looks like and how to live it out. Tune in for Christ is the Answer, Monday through Fridays at 11 a.m. on Ave Maria Radio.
Do you own popular index mutual funds or ETFs? If so, you're automatically own shares of companies that conflict with your moral beliefs. Ave Maria mutual funds are managed to conform to pro-life and pro-family values. Long-term investors can invest in the no-load Ave Maria mutual funds. The experienced professional portfolio managers make decisions based on investment fundamentals and pro-life values. You can learn more about Ave Maria mutual funds today at 866 Ave Maria or visit AveMariaFunds.com.
Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. Much public controversy has swirled around the question of whether science and engineering are compatible with religion. A great deal of Christian evangelization says yes, but the answer misses a few important points, and the question becomes, what difference can Christianity make for engineering and vice versa? Dr. Edmund Seebauer joins us to talk about this. He is the James W. Westmaster Professor Emeritus in Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Edmund, it is great to speak with you. How are you?
Oh, thanks. I'm so excited to be here. It's one of my favorite subjects we're talking about.
Okay, so let's begin with an overarching historical problem, which is the modern utilitarian empiricist worldview isn't even willing to tolerate the notion that there can be a transcendental value to the sciences. And so engineers are relegated to becoming nothing more than utilitarian. Just speak to that, please.
Oh, there's a couple of ways to answer that. Christianity really deals with this in several ways. It provides a rationale for why you're doing engineering that's different from making money or getting famous. It's about serving others. The two great commandments are love God, love your neighbor, and engineering provides a way to do that. The Christian worldview provides a goal, an ultimate goal for what you're trying to accomplish. You're building for a new creation that was inaugurated by the resurrection. Mm-hmm. And building is something that engineers really resonate with. And if you're just building to make money, well, that's nice, but in the end, that doesn't quite satisfy. If you're building to transform and redeem nature, that's a whole different thing. I find that just very exciting. Christianity provides a distinctive window into the spiritual realm for those who are practicing engineering prayerfully as individuals. There are a variety of ways it does that, but it allows you to see the world as nothing more than a bunch of molecules. And So I can expand on that if you like, but maybe we'll touch on that later.
Yeah, let's touch on that in a little bit, because I still want to speak about some big picture spirituality realities. Like you mentioned, Christianity elevates the work of engineering from a mere utilitarian task to a sacred vocation. And you bring up the question of the Beatitudes as well. I want you to just introduce that concept to our listeners, please.
Right. So Beatitudes, these show up all the time in technical practice. So I'm a chemical engineer. My background is in semiconductor processing to make integrated circuits. So if you're working in one of these semiconductor fabrication plants and your boss tells you, we need to increase our throughput to get the production rate up, and you know that it's going to cost you higher safety risks, the beatitude of being willing to endure persecution for the sake of the kingdom allows you to resist that. So if you're a design engineer and you want to, you're not thoroughly steeped in Christianity, and you come up with a really hard, knotty problem that you're confronting, and you're tempted to basically just forge ahead and do it yourself, the beatitude of meekness cultivates the sort of humility you need to seek assistance from colleagues who have complementary expertise.
Right.
So if you tick through all the Beatitudes, there are very direct applications in engineering.
And because of these very direct implications, we start seeing that engineers no longer build or plan their work for the sake of usefulness, utilitarianism. There's suddenly a contribution to the language of the common good. Can you enlighten us about how engineers participate in that?
Yes, in the common good. It's been said that I think it's Theodore von Karman who said that scientists try to understand nature as it is, and engineers try to create things that never were, use nature to do things that never were. And if you take a look at the advances that we almost take for granted in the last century or so, flight, both within the air by spacecraft, smartphones, the materials that go into the clothes we wear and the houses that we build. This all very definitely improves the common good. And but if you're using engineering to make chemical weapons, well, that's not the common good. And so it's the focus on the common good, this notion of serving others, and that it's not an enterprise just for the individual. I want to make a bigger salary. I want to get a promotion. But you're doing something in concert with other engineers. This invokes the body of Christ. In a semiconductor fabrication plant, a chemical engineer works with an electrical engineer, a mechanical engineer, a physicist. They all work together, each bringing their own special expertise, or in our language, charisms, to bring that together so that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and you're building through this new creation for the common good.
And that therefore raises the question of the engineer's continued social role, because his work is more than just infrastructural. And one of the questions that also raises is, it's almost as if one would think secularization and an a-religious or even irreligious society is one that progresses scientifically, like you've mentioned in the past 20th century. But there's a response to this that should compel us to think rightly.
Well, right. I remember traveling to a conference once in Poland about a decade or two ago, and there are still a lot of remnants in Poland from the old Stalin era, communist, right? It was a ruthlessly atheist, and it's this blocky, concrete, quite frankly, pretty ugly designs that are functional, but that's it. You take a look at a beautifully designed bridge or an elegantly designed building, that is artistic. It calls forth the notion of beauty, not just truth and goodness. It calls forth the notion of beauty. And so to the degree that that's informed by Christianity, that is a very different way of doing engineering from being simply utilitarian.
Right. And when you move past that, you start seeing that engineers actually do have a kind of social role, because that beauty can be, first of all, it can uplift the soul to contemplate God, but also it can be long-lasting, so it can impact generation after generation even after them.
The social role, it shows up all over the place.
Yeah.
Like I said, in the devices that you use, your smartphone, in your TV, in the infrastructure, especially if it's beautiful. Engineers are unsung. They do all these things. They take the basic science and they translate it into practical things that all help us to live our lives better.
And like you said, they're unsung. Everyone remembers the physicist or the mathematician behind the calculations, but not the people who make it possible.
That is correct. Everybody remembers Galileo. Everybody remembers Einstein, the great scientist. How many engineers can most people tick off and say, wow, that's a really great engineer? Why? It's a collective enterprise.
Right.
And often done, it seems to be in the DNA of engineers to just get the job done and to see the intrinsic value of it, but just get the job done and not necessarily claim a lot of credit for it.
And therein lies the issue, that this collective enterprise presupposes and even necessitates collective virtue to hit the common goal. But as modern ideologies are permeating all areas of enterprise, including the sciences, like you begin in your article, engineers putting forth pronouns, these progressivist ideologies are being espoused and unfortunately making it into the workplace. And how is it affecting engineering work?
It's difficult. Though fortunately, engineers are sort of congenitally predisposed to want to believe in, nature as it is, objective truth. And so, but still, if someone comes and says you need to use a pronoun of she or they, and I'm really sort of born a he, that is a problem in the engineering world.
Edmund, this was a real joy. My guest has been Dr. Edmund Seabough. We've been talking about Christianity and engineering. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.
Ave Maria School of Law is the Roman Catholic law school in the United States. Consistently ranked in the Princeton Review as one of the best and most conservative law schools, as well as pre-law's most devout law school. Ave Maria School of Law provides a traditional legal education while emphasizing how the law intersects with the Catholic intellectual tradition and natural law philosophy. Ave Maria School of Law, unabashedly Catholic, consistently excellent. For more information, visit avemarialaw.edu.
Ave Maria in the Afternoon is underwritten by the following nonprofit organization: Real Estate for Life. Buying or selling your home or business property? Real Estate for Life can connect you with one of 1,400 pro-life real estate agents around the world. When Real Estate for Life receives a referral fee, they donate 70% to Ave Maria Radio and Human Life International. More information at realestateforlife.org or 877-LIFE-US1. That's realestateforlife.org. On the next Epiphany.
Hi, Vanessa Denha-Garmo here. It's time for Parish of the Week Wednesday. We'll be joined by Father Rodrigue Constantine, the pastor of St. Rafka Maronite Church in Livonia. And what is St. Michael's Lent? Dr. Jared Stout from Exodus 90 will be here to explain.
Epiphany, weekdays at noon. And be sure to catch past episodes in our archive at AveMariaRadio.net.
Ron Finn here, inviting you to join Dave Basheris, Pat Odie-Murray, and me for Morning Offering, the Catholic way to start your day.
We welcome some very special guests each day, including Teresa Tomeo, Andrew Reinhardt, Dr. Ray Garendi, and Matthew Archbold. Plus, my chat with Pat, talking with Catholic experts from all over.
Plus, we're having fun along the way, so you can start your day with a smile. Morning Offering, weekday mornings at 8, here on the Ave Maria Radio family of stations.
It's time for Family Man with Dr. Gregory Popchak.
Want to get more out of family time? Well, here's a simple tip. Look for the differences that make a difference. Keep track of the times your family gets along better throughout the day and ask yourself, what made this work? Write down your answers in a family care notebook. Did you all work better together? Write down why. Did everyone get along on game night? Write down what worked. Was family prayer time especially good? Keep track of all the differences that make a difference in your family life. Then try to intentionally build those differences into your plans moving forward. Putting family time first and getting more out of your time together is one of the most important practices Catholic families can have. To discover more ways your family can celebrate the liturgy of domestic church life, check out the newest editions of Parenting with Grace and visit CatholicCounselors.com. I'm Dr. Greg Popchak, but you can call me Family Man.
To discover more ways faith can enrich your life, visit CatholicCounselors.com.
Support for this Ave Maria radio program comes in part by the non-for-profit St. Anthony Services. Are you shopping for mortgage products, Catholic investing, Catholic health, real estate, or estate planning? StAnthonyServices.org can help you find a Catholic professional for these needs. They regularly connect faithful citizens with faith-based professionals that share our Christian values. More information at StAnthonyServices.org or 877-LIFE-US1.
This program brought to you in part by Ave Maria, Florida, a big kind of small town where golf carts take you everywhere and there's always something fun around the corner. Discover championship golf, resort-style amenities, and a town center full of shopping and dining. With Ave Maria University and Ave Maria Catholic Church at its heart, it's a community full of connection and charm. More than 25 model homes are available for viewing. More information can be found at AveMaria.com. That's AveMaria.com.
Good afternoon, welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. Once the cornerstone of American life, marriage has seen a dramatic fall from grace. In 1960, 4 out of 5 households were led by married couples. Today, that number has plummeted to less than half. More people choosing cohabitation over commitment. The American family as we knew it is unraveling. We discuss the problem and look for a solution with Conn Carroll. Conn is the author of Sex and the Citizen, How the Assault on Marriage is Destroying Democracy, and he's also the commentary editor for the Washington Examiner. Conn, it's great to speak with you. How are you?
It's great to join you.
Well, I'm really glad you're here, and I want to dive right into this. We don't have a lot of time, and we've got a lot of ground to cover. I want to begin by talking about how we got here. And I know that's loaded, but there are certain very key things that happened, especially since the 60s, that we see lead up to the complete breakdown of marriage in public society today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big culprit here is the Academy, which really kind of pushes cultural relativism, and then the Supreme Court, which in a series of 3 cases between 1968 and 1973 really dismantles what I call the American family consensus and really disallows states and the federal government from channeling the sexual desire within people towards the beneficial, cooperating institution that is marriage.
And because of that, when you see, these thinkers that suddenly try to tell us how we ought to rethink nature and the way we operate. So, you've got your Dan Savage, you've got your Stephanie Coontz, your, what's his first name again? Ryan. Chris Ryan. Yeah, Chris Ryan. And the funny thing is, I actually think Stephanie Coontz has a point that the introduction of romantic love as the primary basis for marriage has really colored the way society thinks about marriage, and I invite you to comment on that.
Sure. So I think where I kind of disagree with Kuntz is she makes it seem like romantic love has just entered marriage in the past couple hundred years. But really, she never even defines love in her book. I mean, and as we know, when we go back to the Old Testament or Greek myths or Roman history, love has been part of marriage forever. What really changed way before the last 200 years actually comes from the Catholic Church, and that before the Catholic Church reintroduced monogamy to humanity, pretty much all of human society was polygamous. When you think of any empire, the Roman Empire, the Vikings, the Mongol Empire, the Maya in India, the Mali in Africa, the Aztecs in South America. These are all slave-holding polygamous empires. And it's not until Christianity reintroduces monogamy that you see a breakup of this tribal polygamous power. And a big part of that, a big part of the church's teaching is consent in marriage.
Right.
And so it is this consent portion I mean, and that's what Kuntz really meant when she talks about marrying for love. The juxtaposition for Kuntz of marrying for love is arranged marriages. And she's right. For a lot of time, most marriages were arranged to keep wealth and power within families. But what really pushed against that was the Catholic Church.
Yep.
So you have what Joseph Heinrich of Harvard calls the Church's marriage and family program, which included, a ban on polygamy, a ban on inheritance to illegitimate offspring, and a ban on arranged marriages, and then a ban on cousin marriages. And you may ask why a ban on cousin marriages, and it's because so many cousin marriages were really just farces in order to arrange marriages and keep wealth within the families. And so by the church pushing people to actually find new people and consent to marriage, that really broke apart these patriarchal clan structures and allowed for civil society, democracy, and the Industrial Revolution to thrive.
And therein lies the issue. Like I commented earlier, Kuntz makes a particular point if she says that the modern notion of overtly romanticized love is what brought about the breakdown of marriage in society. But like you mentioned, love has always been a central framework for the Church's teaching on marriage and the family, and that love is bound by duty. It's bound by fidelity. And so this push that we're seeing now with the narrative being shifted that, mankind was completely polyamorous until fairly recently, and that's only because of property that monogamy came into the picture. That's a profound lie. So please just illuminate that for us.
Sure. Actually, this goes back to Marx, who actually got it from an American. It's not really his fault. So there was this early American anthropology, and anthropology is just getting started. His name was Lewis Morgan, and he was based out of New York, and he was really fascinated by the Iroquois. And he befriended the Iroquois by defending them in court and won a landus before them in court, and became friends with them and really started to study them. And it's not that the Iroquois were polygamous. They were not. They were a monogamous society. But the way that they talked about and the words that they used for aunt and uncle and everything were the same as for mother and father. And when he found out that this was a similar pattern of other Native American tribes, and that these language patterns also existed in East Asia and Polynesia, he then theorized that there must have been some type of polygamous polygamous event before we embraced monogamy. And it was Marx that took on this reading of Lewis Morgan, and then he supposed in his work on the family that, look, we were all, basically, in his words is polygamous horde before property and marriage came along and changed all that. But it turns out that that's just wrong. Anthropology has gone through so much more since then, and they've recorded every society they ever come into contact with, including hunter-gatherers tribes. Every society you come into is either monogamous or polygamous. There was never a polyandrous horde of people who just belonged to each other and everybody slept with everybody and there was no marriage. There's always been marriage in every society.
Right.
And so Marx was just wrong about that. It's something that has affected the left in human history ever since.
And unfortunately, like you've mentioned, it's affected the left. And as we take a look at the redefinition of marriage, one of the arguments they make, which they think is a claim to natural law, well, chimps do this or bonobo monkeys do this, but none of that's a good line of argumentation. But there's more to it than just arguing that, well, this is what happens in chimpanzee communities that you highlight. If you could speak briefly to that.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, so yes, chimps and polygamous are chimps and bonobos are very polyamorous. They may, conspicuously, but they also don't help each other out in raising children. So when you look at like chimpanzees, not only do female chimpanzees not help each other, the alpha female will steal babies from lower ranking females and starve it to death. Okay. You have these vicious social hierarchies where the males will beat each other and kill each other for access to food and, more importantly, for access to females. There is some cooperation on the men of the chimpanzees to defend their territory, but that's about it. It's not until you get monogamy that you have men being brought into a long-term partnership of cooperative care with women, so that they were starting to raise these children together. And it's because of that partnership, it's because of that equal partnership between men and women that you have the humans be able to develop brains. Most of the brain development that happens in humans happens way after birth. Women actually spend way more calories lactating than they do when the baby's inside of. So all of that brain development happens after. And the only way that happens is with a husband coming in and helping the wife to do that. And the only way the husband is incentivized to do that is through monogamy.
And considering that, Conn, we're running out of time, but just very, very quickly, if you could also comment on, therefore, human development in society and the hunter-gatherer model.
So basically all hunter-gatherer tribes that have been, come into contact with are monogamous. And so that really is kind of more of our natural state. And when we move away from it, you have either a despotism of polygamy and slavery, which is terrible, or you have something like the more modern societies we have, which have used monogamy to solidify civil society and other organizations that have allowed us to kind of grow and thrive and have the institutions we have today that support our advanced development.
Now, I'm going to pause there because we're running out of time in this segment. Going on to the other side of the break, I am talking with Conn Carroll. He is the author of Sex and the Citizen, How the Assault on Marriage is Destroying Democracy. And the core argument here is that an exploration of history, an honest exploration of history and the development of human society, but also just the exploration of data as we know it right now, proves that monogamy and therefore committed marriage and family models are the way that societies truly thrive. And so we want to talk about solutions and pathways forward from there. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.
Looking for a retreat venue for your youth group, sports team, ministry, or staff event? St. Francis Retreat Center in DeWitt sits on a picturesque 95-acre property, complete with 3 large conference rooms, 2 chapels, 2 dining rooms with commercial kitchens, meeting spaces for smaller groups, overnight lodging, and a professional staff to make your event a success. Call 517-669-8321 or visit stfrancis.ws to book your event today.
No one should ever have to choose between feeding their family and keeping their heat on. Impossible questions like rent or diapers demand answers every day, likely in your very own neighborhood. But you can help. Hope Clinic partners with you to provide free medical, dental, food, and behavioral health care, all in Jesus' name. While others face impossible choices, your choice is an easy one. Partner with Hope Clinic today. Find out how at www.thehopeclinic.org.
Underwritten in part by the following nonprofit.
Are you paying high prices with a traditional health insurance company that pays for things that violate your conscience? There's an alternative available. Solidarity HealthShare is a community of faithful individuals and families that never share into immoral medical services, all while saving you money with prices starting as low as $85 per month for singles and $512 for families. Never fund another abortion with your healthcare dollars. Call 844-313-4999 to learn more.
Hi, I'm Dr. Marcus Peter. Ave Maria Radio spearheads the proclamation of the gospel into all areas of society and culture. And so we want to invite you to think about what Catholic radio means for you. Because our towers and our equipment need updating. And we want to ask you to think about the impact of Catholic radio and how your donations can help continue the propagation of the gospel for the salvation of souls to all who hear it. Thank you for joining us on this wondrous mission.
One person doesn't like the Mona Lisa, the second person does. And the third person says, well, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's a popular saying, we know that. Remember, though, that beauty is an element of being. It describes what a thing is. And because it is an element of being, while we talk about beautiful paintings and buildings, we also talk about beautiful persons. We know that Grandma Kuzno is beautiful. We know that our children are beautiful. It even gives us joy to see the cleaning lady in the halls of school because she, too, carries a radiance of beauty. And if someone were to contradict you, if someone were to say, your consideration of Grandma Kuzno's beauty is just your own subjective opinion, we would know that person is wrong. Because beauty is not in the eye of the beholder, it is in my grandmother, it is in my child. GuadalupeWorkers.org.
Beacon Skin and Surgeries is a comprehensive dermatology center on the border of Troy and Rochester Hills south of M59 and in Livonia. Beacon Skin and Surgeries perform full skin exams and focus on the diagnosis and treatment of all types of skin cancer and precancerous lesions. All are board-certified dermatologists and fellowship-trained surgeons. Call 248-852-1900. Beacon Skin and Surgeries, a beacon for patient care. 248-852-1900.
When the need for senior care arises, home is where the heart is. Visiting Angels provides home care for mom or dad up to 24 hours per day, including personal care, meals, and light housework. You may select your professional caregiver with Visiting Angels. More information at visitingangels.com or at 877-374-LIVE. That's 877-374-LIVE. Visiting Angels, America's choice in senior home care.
Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. I am speaking with Conn Carroll, author of Sex and the Citizen, How the Assault on Marriage is Destroying Democracy. He's also commentary editor for the Washington Examiner. Conn, again, I'm going to try to cover as much ground in as little time as possible. One of the things that you highlight in your book is how Richard Reeves, in his research, demonstrates that there really is a grave problem of fatherlessness and therefore a loss of role models for young boys to become men. But he doesn't bring the research full circle. You do, though. I wonder if you could comment on that.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, Richard Reeves is very successful. He has a new kind of like his own think tank funded by Bezos's ex-wife and her billions. But basically, you know, what he wants to do is create a new institution that is not marriage. He basically wants to create an alternative to marriage, which is fatherhood. Mm-hmm. And you know, divorce happens, you know, death happens, and we want to support fathers with their children. However, what he seems to forget is that when you have divorce, when you have what actually is more common today than divorce. I mean, we talk about a lot of people talk about family dissolution and presume it's divorce, but actually these days that's in the minority of cases. Mm-hmm. What happens most of the time is you have a cohabitating family that was never married. Right, and then they just separate. So the question is, you know, what does the father do then? And a lot of times, you know, the mother doesn't want the father in the life, or let's say the father, you know, reconnects with another woman and wants to start a new family and marry, you know, her. You know, it's that we should be encouraging, because fathers can be active in children's lives, but they're going to be most active in the lives of children that they live with on a daily basis. And the only institution that brings man and woman under a roof in a safe environment to raise children together is marriage. Mm-hmm. And he's just denying that simple fact by pretending that you can create this new standard of fatherhood that will somehow bring fathers into homes they don't live in. And unfortunately, I think it's just a waste of money and time, and it's a false vision that I think he's selling.
I agree. You also highlight Louise Perry. You know, Louise does a good job of recognizing that there are complementary differences between male and female, but again, there's almost complete disdain for committed monogamous marriage.
Well, I think, you know, Louise Perry is a little pessimistic. I don't think she recognizes. She views it as mostly cultural, right? Mm-hmm. But I think there's a lot of things that the federal government has done at the Supreme Court level, the congressional level, to break up the family. Right. And yes, there's a cultural element to it, but a lot of times policy is downstream from culture. Yep. So, you know, when you have a social safety net, welfare state, you know, think of any government means-tested program. Medicaid's been in the news recently. Food stamps also in the news. Section 8 housing, all of those, right? The earned income tax credit, the child tax credit, all of these, right? They all punish marriage because they are means tested, meaning that if a single mom who is working and wants to marry the father of her children made that decision, she would end up getting, you know, maybe for one program it's $1,000, maybe for another program it's $800. But after all those add up, it can be a lot. It can end up being $10,000, $15,000 a year that it's hit. And so actually the federal and state governments combined spend over $1 trillion on these social safety net programs that actually punish marriage, right? Yeah. And that has downstream effects. That has cultural effects. There's another feminist author I quote in the book. I forget her name, but she was talking about this very welfare question, and she says, "Oh, it doesn't really matter." But then she quotes this young mother who she's talking to. She said, "Yeah, you know what? If it wasn't for the fact that I lose my food stamps, I would marry my boyfriend." And it's just like, boom, that's it, right there.
Yep.
That's the answer. And they just refuse to acknowledge that the government programs have these kinds of effects on people.
Yep. The Two-Parent Privilege by Kearney, it's a pretty well-written book, and I agree with a lot of the premise of the book, at least the core arguments. But like you mentioned, it completely doesn't address this reality of a marriage penalty. And the moment states and federal governments go down the path of marriage penalties, you've disincentivized the onus of marriage.
Yeah, and they do this constant bait and switch where they talk about welfare, the AFTC program, right? And they say, oh, welfare, the AFTC program has, shrunken, it's changed names, it's now known as TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, and it's not worth as much as it used to be. It's like, yeah, that's all true. However, the menu of other programs that you've shut down poor people's throats have vastly expanded. Mm-hmm. Like I said, you have Medicaid, you have CHIP, you have food stamps, you have all these other programs that come in and are much bigger than welfare now. So they try to make it just seem like the marriage penalty is a specifically AFTC TANF problem, and it's not. It's a means-tested program problem that affects everything the government tries to do for poor people. And considering that and the continued breakdown of monogamous marriage in the larger societal sphere, Conn, I wonder if you could comment on what marks America when you look from the outside in is supposed to be the American dream, upward social mobility, stability in socio-political infrastructure, all of that. But with the breakdown of marriage, how are we seeing this reality of the American dream affected? Yeah, absolutely. That's a wonderful question. So there's another Harvard economist. His name's Raj Chetty. And so he looked at all of this data, very, particularized going back from the early 60s to today. And so he broke it down by neighborhood, and he looked at which neighborhood had the most social mobility. So this means, how often does someone who grew up in a poor household become middle class or wealthy, right? What he found is that those neighborhoods that had the highest percentage of men in the home, which basically means married fathers in the home, right? Those neighborhoods had the highest levels of social mobility. And in those neighborhoods where there were no men in the home, when there were just a dearth of married fathers, there was no social mobility. So, a lot of liberals will say, the American dream is dead, social mobility has gone down. And in a lot of ways, they're right, unfortunately. Because marriage has broken down so much, you just have so many homes, so many young children, and this hits boys the hardest, actually. Boys are the hardest hit from not having fathers in the home, that just don't have a role model to look at what successful modern man does. And so they fall by the wayside. They fall in with the wrong people. They make bad decisions. They end up in jail. They drop out of school. And so when you have all these things, the other thing I forgot to tell you about this research is it doesn't have to be the father in the home. He saw that it was a neighborhood effective. So it's not just that, if you get divorced, if your father died, you're screwed, right? If you live in a neighborhood that has a lot of marriage, so there are a lot of married dads around for you to look at, then that's just as good. But the problem is that when breakup and when family formation never happens to begin with, and there's so many neighborhoods where there just aren't any dads around, that's when you really lose the role models, and that's when you really break down the social mobility that we used to have in past generations. Right. Because if society was a lot more stable in terms of the marital framework, then one particular family lacking either father or mother figure is able to find not pseudo, but replacement, if you will. Like these gap filling. There's just other examples to see in daily life. Right. And you see this in the church. The whole premise of the church's structure is that you've got father figures at every single juncture and mother figures in sisters and nuns. So the premise here is that where natural families fail, the spiritual family can rise up. But the problem is we're not even seeing the natural society want to take up that onus. So you bring up the example of Hungary. Change was difficult, but they made it happen. Yeah, not just Hungary. I also mentioned the Army in our book. But so Hungary coming out of communism, they had a lot of the same problems we do as far as cohabitation, kind of replacing marriage. But they really made what they did for a number of years, made a commitment to marriage in particular. Now, some of the tax benefit policies that they since have kind of disincentivized marriage. Poland probably is now a better model. But when you look at the United States, after they decided to get rid of the draft, they decided that they were going to need to come up with a lot better way of retaining soldiers and making them good soldiers who would last. And so what they did is they decided to incentivize marriage and try to get them married. So it used to be that, only like 10 to 15% of enlisted men were married. And now it's more like 60, 70%. And they did it through, marriage bonuses, marriage stipends for housing on base. And they're able to create a culture of marriage within the Army that then carries through the whole organization and becomes a support system for that group. So this is policy being, upstream of culture, and that there are policy decisions we can make that can change culture and can help make people better citizens.
And the other issue is making men and women marriageable. We have very little time left. I just want to invite you to comment on that.
Yeah. So a lot of book might talk about kind of new threats for young men that face. I don't know if you're a sports fan at all, but you used to be able to watch a college football game and see no gambling ads. Now it's like online gambling stuff down your throat. And here's the thing about online gambling is that it hits young men the hardest, young poor men the hardest, right when they need to be making good decisions and building wealth so that they can be an attractive mate for a woman. Instead, it takes that money away from them. And that's a policy choice. 10 years ago, these ads didn't exist. This was all just legalized yesterday. Same with online pornography. There is no earthly reason we need to all have infinite 24-hour, 7-day-a-week access to the most degrading, hardcore pornography on our phones. That is a policy choice. We could stop that, and yet we don't. And the research on how pornography degrades men's ability to connect with women is strong. And so we're just taking young men and shoving really important down their throats, and they're just not becoming the men they need to be to attract a woman and start a family.
This was really great, Conn. Thank you very much for making the time.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
My guest has been Conn Carroll, author of Sex and the Citizen, How the Assault on Marriage is Destroying Democracy. He's also a commentary editor for the Washington Examiner. Do procure a copy of it, and let's continue this conversation ourselves. Save marriage, save the world. I'm Marcus Peter.